There is a specific moment that decides who holds power in an argument, in a flirtation, in a conflict with a friend, in almost any tense exchange between two people. It is not the moment someone says something sharp or provocative. It is the moment right after, the half second where the other person watches your face to see if it landed. Most men lose that moment without even realizing a moment existed. Something is said. A jab, a test, a comment meant to unsettle. And within half a second, the reaction fires. The jaw tightens. The voice rises. The comeback comes flying out before it has even been thought through. In that instant, control changes hands completely. Here is what almost nobody tells men. Reacting is not strength. Reacting is information. Every time you respond instantly and emotionally to something someone said or did, you hand them a live readout of exactly where your buttons are and exactly how hard they need to press to move you. You have just taught them how to control you, for free, in real time. The man who waits is playing an entirely different game. He is not being passive. He is not being weak or slow or unaffected. He feels the exact same spike of emotion everyone else feels. The difference is that he does not let that spike drive his mouth. He lets it pass through him first, and in the space created by that pause, he decides what actually deserves a response, rather than reacting to whatever demanded one the loudest. Seneca wrote about this directly in his essay on anger. He said the best remedy for anger is delay. Not suppression, not denial, but delay. Give the emotion a moment to move through you before it moves through your words. Anger that is given time almost always loses its grip. Anger that is acted on instantly almost always creates a mess that outlives the moment that caused it. Think about how this plays out with a woman who tests you. She might say something sharp, something designed to see how quickly she can knock you off balance. Maybe it is a comment about another man. Maybe it is a jab at something you are insecure about. Maybe it is silence where warmth used to be. Drop deliberately to see if you will chase it. The man who reacts immediately gives her the answer to a question she was not even sure she was asking. He proves, in real time, that a small comment can control his mood, his tone, his entire demeanor for the rest of the night. That is not attractive. That reads as exactly what it is. A man who can be operated with a few well-placed words. The man who waits does something completely different. He notices the comment. He lets it land. He does not pretend it did not happen, and he does not overcorrect by pretending it did not bother him with a forced laugh or a joke that comes out one beat too fast. He simply does not hand over his composure on command. And in that stillness, something shifts. She is no longer sure she has the control she thought she had. That uncertainty is far more magnetic than any comeback could ever be. The same pattern shows up at work. Someone challenges you in a meeting, undercuts you in front of colleagues, or takes credit for something that was yours. The instant reactive move is to correct it on the spot, raise your voice slightly, defend your territory in front of everyone. It feels justified in the moment. But watch what it actually communicates. It says this person can be provoked into losing composure in a professional setting with one sentence. The man who waits handles it differently. He does not pretend the moment did not happen. He simply refuses to let it dictate his tone. He might address it later, privately, deliberately, with far more precision than anything he could have said in the heat of the moment. By the time he responds, it is not a reaction anymore. It is a decision. And decisions carry weight that reactions never do. This is where Epictetus becomes useful. He taught that it is not what happens to you that matters. It is how you respond to it. The event itself, the comment, the insult, the test, the slight, is completely outside your control. Someone else chose to say it or do it. But your response belongs entirely to you. The moment you understand that distinction, you stop treating other people's actions as commands you are obligated to react to. Marcus Aurelius wrote something similar in his private notebook, the collection we now call Meditations. He reminded himself constantly that he had power over his own mind, not over outside events, and that realizing this was the source of real strength. He was not writing this as an emperor giving orders. He was writing it to himself, privately, as a discipline he had to practice daily, because even a man who ruled an empire had to fight the same instinct to react that every ordinary man fights in an argument with his girlfriend or his coworker. That is worth sitting with for a moment. The most powerful man in Rome still had to remind himself not to react. This is not a talent some men are born with and others are not. It is a discipline. It has to be practiced deliberately, in small moments, until it becomes the default instead of the exception. This shows up constantly in something as small as texting. She takes longer to reply than usual, or the tone of her message shifts slightly, and the reactive move is to send a follow-up message immediately, or a slightly cold response designed to signal that you noticed. Both of those moves broadcast the exact same thing. They broadcast that a delayed text or a shorter sentence was enough to change your entire emotional state within minutes of receiving it. The man who waits does not need to perform indifference through a fake delayed reply of his own. That is just reacting with extra steps. He simply continues with whatever he was doing, responds when it makes sense to respond, and does not let a 2-hour gap in a text thread rewrite his mood for the rest of the day. This is harder in practice than it sounds, because phones make every provocation instantly available and instantly answerable. The pause has to be chosen deliberately, because the technology itself is built to remove it. The same applies to group chats and social situations where someone makes a joke at your expense in front of others. The reactive move is to defend yourself immediately, often too forcefully, which only signals that the joke found its mark. The man who waits lets the moment pass, responds if something clever comes to mind naturally, and does not manufacture urgency where none exists. 9 times out of 10, the room forgets the joke within a minute. It is only the overreaction that makes it memorable. So how does a man actually build this? It starts with noticing the gap. The next time something lands, a comment, a slight, a test, a provocation, notice the half-second before you respond. Do not fill it immediately. Let it stretch by even one extra breath. That single breath is where all of this lives. It is not dramatic. It will not feel like much in the moment. But it is the entire mechanism that separates a man who gets managed by other people's words and a man who manages himself regardless of what anyone says to him. Second, stop treating every comment as a demand for an immediate verbal response. Silence is not weakness. Silence is often the most controlled response available. And it is the one option most men never consider because it feels like doing nothing. It is not doing nothing. It is choosing not to hand over your composure just because someone else wanted a reaction. Third, separate the sting from the substance. Most provocations are designed to produce a feeling, not to communicate real information. When you feel the sting, ask yourself plainly whether this actually requires a response, or whether it only feels urgent because it stung. Most of the time, it does not require anything at all. It simply requires you to keep existing calmly in front of someone who is hoping you would not be able to. Fourth, remember that waiting is not the same as absorbing everything silently forever. There is a difference between composed patience and emotional suppression. This is not about swallowing every insult and never addressing a real problem. It is about choosing your moment and your words deliberately, instead of letting someone else choose them for you by provoking a reaction. Here is the deeper truth underneath all of this. Every relationship, romantic, professional, or social, has an invisible balance of who is setting the emotional tempo and who is following it. The man who reacts instantly to everything is always following. He is always one step behind, responding to whatever just happened, instead of operating from his own center. The man who waits, who absorbs the moment before choosing whether and how to respond, is the one setting the tempo, whether anyone in the room consciously notices it or not. This does not mean becoming cold or detached from people you care about. It means understanding that your composure is not a public resource anyone can access simply by pushing the right button. It is something you protect deliberately, the same way you would protect anything else valuable. People sense this without being able to name it. They sense that provoking you does not produce the payoff it used to produce with other men, and that alone changes how they treat you. If you recognize yourself in the reactive pattern, do not treat this as a character flaw to be ashamed of. Treat it as a skill you have simply never practiced deliberately. Start today with one interaction. The next time someone says something designed to get a rise out of you, let the half-second stretch. Notice how much power sits inside that tiny space you almost never use. The man who reacts loses control the instant he opens his mouth. The man who waits keeps it the entire time, because he was never handing it over to begin with. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe. New videos on exactly this kind of discipline come out every week. And drop a comment telling me where you catch yourself reacting the most, because naming the pattern out loud is usually the first step to breaking it.